How are we doing, everybody? This is Brent Swanson from Midwest Muscle Report, here with Tony Friedrich, fresh off of his victory at North Americans, and we have a new IFBB Pro on hands. How are we doing, Tony?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, no worries. Talk to us kind of about this year and, you prepping for the show. And, you did 3 shows, actually 2 shows leading up to the North Americans. So kind of talk to us about this prep and just kind of go through it for us.
Well, last year I ended up moving from St. Louis, Missouri to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And prior to moving, I had kind of toyed around with the idea of getting on stage because I didn't know with the transition that was going to occur, over the course of the next year. I didn't know if I'd be competing anytime soon. So actually it was exactly 33 days out from my state show last year. My wife was like, I dare you to do it. And I did a 33-day prep, jumped into my state show and won my state show, thinking that would kind of fill the void, for a while as far as competing. So I ended up winning that. Moved down here in September to Fort Lauderdale and then started working and kind of, my training and everything took on a different approach. Back home, I had my choice of training partners, could train pretty much every day, midday, and it was very ideal for bodybuilding, obviously. Moving down here, I still have a good schedule, but I've kind of had to adapt in the form of, training at different times, and my training partner became my wife. So she was training with me full time. So beginning of this year, I kind of started to kind of play around with my diet a little bit. And I'll go through phases where I eat more and eat less. If I get stagnant in weight gain, I'll start eating a little bit less, and mini diet, if you will. And that's kind of what I started doing about 5.5 weeks out from Team U. And things started progressing a little bit. So I had kind of threw out the idea to my wife, and I knew she wasn't like too keen on me competing, but she said, well, if you're going to do it, you're going to do Masters too. They're right by one another, so you might as well do it. So I jumped into the first one with a 5.5 week prep under my belt, and everything went really, really well. I ended up getting 3rd in the Masters 35 Super there at Team U, and I felt like I was really full. Everything looked polished, but I felt like I could be a little bit leaner. The feedback that I got from the judges was, don't really change a thing, just come in a pound or 2 tighter, which at that show I weighed in at, I think I was like 233 and a half. So came back home, 2.5 weeks I had between Team U and Masters, and kind of just kept pushing and ended up going to Masters. I weighed in exactly a pound less than I was at Team U, and I felt like I was leaner. So, but I wasn't quite as full, but I was definitely leaner and drier for that second show. Ended up placing 3rd again. So feedback that I got from the judges was, don't change a thing this time. Well, I was contemplating being done. And when I got home, I don't know if you guys had known, but like there was that whole Southwest Airlines deal where like they had all the computers went down and everything like that. So there was this huge sale on online. Well, when we came home, my wife had looked on there, I guess, and she goes, you're doing North Americans, and she booked the airfare and did everything, like signed me up for the show.
Right.
So I had 6 weeks, I guess it was, between then and the North Americans. So for a couple of days, I ate a little bit, and about a week and a half, I kind of pulled back on my volume as far as my training a little bit. But then, 4.5 weeks out or so, I started making the push to go into that show. And it never fails for me. I always end up getting sick, usually about 2 weeks out from a show. This time it was a lot closer. I got sick Sunday before the show. I compete on Thursday. I got sick Sunday. Started getting real bad sinus infection, real bad drainage. I mean, flying to Pittsburgh was just a nightmare with my ears and everything. And long and the short of it, man, is, as miserable as I was, everything worked out really, really well. I feel like for the first show this year, I was full but not as lean. The second show I was leaner but not as full, and then this third show everything just really came together. I weighed in again at this third show at North Americans. I was 232 pounds, and that's pretty much where I stayed. I like to monitor my weight the entire day that I compete to kind of see where I'm at, and I held that weight the entire day. So it worked out really, really well, and everything that I did, just worked out really, really well. I couldn't have asked for a better outcome. My goal was to win my class, because historically we all know one of those cards usually goes to the heavier weight classes, or
Right.
usually two of them do. But I had no aspirations of winning the overall, so that was just that much sweeter when that did happen. I mean, I wasn't even looking that far, to be honest with you, but then to be awarded the overall was just, it was great.
Cloud nine. As we talked earlier, we've been friends for quite some time. It's just awesome to see somebody like you who has toiled in the sport. This is your passion. This is what you love to do for so long. You've always been a great bodybuilder, but just to see the transformations you made, to see how you brought up your weak areas, and now, it comes full circle. Now you're an IFBB pro. I mean, the emotions and just the level of, satisfaction I know right now probably got to be awesome for you, and saying now that you can say, that, hey, I'm an IFBB pro.
Yeah, it was 13 years. It's been 13 years since my first show. My first show was in October of 2003 in Norman, Oklahoma, the Red River Classic. And, so once I won, like when I came off the stage, I had my good friend David Fish and another guy, Jason Stock. They had flown in from Iowa to support me and to be there to help me and everything. And my wife, of course, was there with our dog, Wilbur. And when I came out, everybody was like, how do you feel? How do you feel? And, I was just in shock. And it didn't really hit me until I got in the car. And I saw I had like 48 missed text messages from all my friends, and they were just going one after another. And then, I read one that was sent to me by my father, and it made me pretty emotional, because it made me think, like, clear back to that first show all the way to that night, to, all the ups and downs, the highs, the lows, the people that, I had come into contact with, the damaged relationships, the relationships that blossomed through bodybuilding, just all of the things, of course, looking at myself, lastly, what I went through, but just all the road, basically, like it was just a whirlwind of emotions.
Right.
And even now, like it'll set in at different points. Like it hasn't fully set in, but I'll just start to think about it, and it's just, it sounds weird, man, or it just sounds goofy, but it just takes your breath away, because you just start thinking about everything that you put everyone around you through, and everything that you put yourself through, but as far as being fulfilled, man, it's just, there's not a better feeling.
Oh,
there truly isn't a better feeling, because it's, I started off this journey, with just simple, realistic goals. My first show, I wanted to win the novice class, and then I wanted to win an open class, and then I wanted to win an overall. And it's like, I've always set what I felt were realistic, attainable goals for myself. And it wasn't until many, many years down the road where I thought, honestly, as far as being a pro, it wasn't probably until like 2 or 3 years ago where I thought, well, maybe I could sneak in there and get that done. Maybe I could do that, so I've always been very respectful of those that have come before me, and respected bodybuilding and old school bodybuilding, and just that old school mentality. A lot of times today, guys, I talked about this in another video, guys will do 1 or 2 shows and they may do okay and win their class, and then the next thing they're talking about is going pro or doing a pro qualifier. And that to me is just great for them. That's fine if that's what they want to do, but it's almost disrespectful in my mind, to the guys that have come before us and the people that have put, look at somebody like John Meadows, how many years did he battle? It's just, I don't know, man. You gotta have a lot of respect for certain.
Yeah, but
people.
like I was gonna say, people who have battled and just aren't like the genetic freaks that you see, but are still very good bodybuilders. I know with me, those are the people that I like to follow. I like to follow, as a fan of the sport, I like to follow, the genetic freaks. But literally, I want to pick the guy's brain who is a good bodybuilder and has made themselves great and who's been through the process, because I don't have those genetics either, so maybe I can pick up something from them that might help me down the road. And typically those people have more knowledge because they've had to go through so much in order to, be where they are,
Yeah, so, it's more relatable for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Now, kind of going back, I want to go back a little bit because something that kind of caught my attention. You talked about, you do shorter preps probably because you stay, pretty lean in your off season. Do you like doing shorter preps versus longer preps, or is that just what works for you, or what's kind of your take on that?
My body has changed so much. Of course, when I first started out, my first prep was a shotgun prep because the guy helping me at the time was like, hey, I think you could do this show. And I had never even thought about competing. So it was literally, I didn't know any better. It was 8 weeks of no carbs, no fats, no nothing,
no
like
food.
a ton of cardio. And we've all been there.
Yeah.
I've done some longer preps, 16, 20 weeks. And I think that was just before I had like a solid understanding of my body. In the past 2 years, Justin Compton, my buddy, has been helping me. But I think the main thing for me is, like I said, aside from my body and my metabolism over the years, just basically kind of changing. You're right. I am very consistent with my diet off season wise. So it's pretty easy for me to lose weight. Right. Knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't ever change, but it's pretty easy for me to lose weight because I am so consistent with everything. I mean, I'm very, very anal. I drink my Diet Mountain Dew at the same time every day, whether I'm in prep or off season. I use the same condiments. So as far as sodium intake, not that I'm calculating it, but like the way that I look at it is if you don't use things that you have to take away when you prep, then you don't miss anything. Correct. You know what I mean? So everything is very, very consistent. So it's simply a matter of pulling away a little bit of calories here and there, and that's what I typically do. So when I said like the 5.5 wing thing before Team U, for me it's not dieting, it's just eating less.
Right.
Like it's down. Yeah. So for me, it just seems like my body responds a lot better to that. If I diet for too long, I don't have the best genetics. I don't have those round, full, pretty muscle bellies. So like if I diet for too long, I tend to get stringy. And I think by doing a shorter diet, I can maintain more muscle and a fuller look, which is key for me when I get onto stage. Something I've struggled with a long time has been maintaining that fullness when I get to stage. And we talked briefly offline or off video about it, but for me, it's always been one of those things where I've always been in really good shape between 230 and 235, but then I would always make that push to 225. And in doing so, my conditioning wouldn't change a whole lot, but what would happen is I would lose that fullness and I'd never be able to get it back.
Right.
All these guys you hear about, I'm going to dip down and weigh in at 220 and then I'm going to blow back up to 230. I've competed almost 25, 26 times, something like that. I've done 20 some odd shows, and I think there's been 2 shows where my weight has went up right. Once I weighed in, and I think it maybe went up by like 3 or 4 pounds. You know what I mean?
And then the guys who typically do that, they better know their bodies really well, because if not, it can get ugly pretty quick.
Yeah. So it's just, I laugh at that sometimes because it's just, I don't know what they're doing, but it doesn't happen on the regular for me, that's for sure.
Yeah, me either. Well, now transitioning, you're a brand new IFBB pro. What's next for you? What should we expect to see from you in the next year? Are you gonna take a year off? Are you gonna hit a pro show next year? Or have you even thought that far yet?
I haven't even thought that far. Honestly, for the first time, Brett, for me, my wife asked me when we got home and kind of got settled, she's like, well, how do you feel? Like, what's on your mind? It's like, I want to train, I want to eat, but for the first time since 2003, since my first show, I kind of have a calmness about me, and you know how it is. After every show that you do for that 24 hours, your mind is kind of at ease, but then within 24 hours, you're thinking, okay, what's the next show?
Yeah,
what am I doing?
Yeah.
And you're back in that mode, whereas this time, it's like, I'm a realist, man. It's going to take a lot for me to ever be able to compete with those guys on that level. Would I like to do one? Absolutely. Is it going to be anytime soon? No. I always try to stay within striking distance, so it's not too terrible of an issue for me as far as that goes. But I have no plans as of right now. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I would say, we're doing this days after your victory. Let it soak in and enjoy your time. I mean, it's been a long road. It's been an awesome road. Like I said, we've been friends. I followed your journey, and it's just very, very good. It's very good. It's very heartwarming when you see a good person in the sport achieve this and, do it. So, I mean, I couldn't be more happy for you.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
I hope I bump into you. You're going to be at the Olympia, obviously, so I hope I bump into you out there. I'll be out there with Protein. It's going to be my first time going to the Olympia.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, we're sponsored by Protein, so we'll definitely be there, and we'll definitely meet up and talk. So we get there on a Tuesday, so we'll look forward to bumping into you for sure in one of those days.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. Hey, guys, this is Brent Swanson from Midwest Muscle Report here with new pro, Tony Friedrich. Great guy, and we're so glad at Midwest Muscle Report of how well he did at North Americans. Stay tuned for what's going to come next from Tony. I'm sure that we'll be in contact, and make sure to follow him and follow his journey. Thanks, guys.